welcome to the Axcess Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Vinny Masana. We are filming live tonight from the beautiful Long Island Fieldhouse in Hauppauge, New York, joined by a very special guest, Glenn Mitchell. Glenn was in the minor leagues, played pro ball beginning in 1987 with the Braves, and since then he has been very involved in the Long Island baseball community, giving lessons, running GEM pitching, and now he has GEM Mental Game Pro. So Glenn, very nice to be joined by you tonight, and thank you for being a part of the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's take it back a little bit to the earlier days. You grew up in Malverne, New York, correct? So can you tell our audience a little bit about your early experiences with Long Island baseball?
Yeah, no, it was nice. I was playing for Malverne High School. We didn't have so many AAU teams like they have now. And I was playing for the Long Island Dodgers, and I was just having a good time playing baseball and basketball for Malverne High School. That was really it.
A lot different than it is now, right?
It's just they got the social media, like your podcast and all the things that's going on now. It's totally different.
Yeah. Fortunately, they did have avenues for you to get noticed, and I know that you got your shot in pro ball back in 1987 from an MLB showcase on Long Island, right?
Yeah, Ralph Doolittle was the head of the showcase, and Larry Izzo and, of course, Pat Short was a part of that. At Eisenhower Park, they had the showcase, and they sent a letter to my coach at Malverne High School, Lou Order, who sent me there, and that's how they saw me. Yep.
How did they get the word out back then? Because, like you mentioned, with social media now, it would be different. They would just put it on an email chain or on social media. But they had to find the best players in a short period of time.
All they did was send out a letter, mail. Regular postal mail. That's how they would do it.
Yep, and I'm sure back then, if you were on the radar of teams for the draft,
right,
it was a similar situation too, right? If you were drafted.
No, for me it wasn't, because nobody knew of me. Malverne High School wasn't famous for baseball. They were famous for basketball. So when I was playing baseball, they didn't know me. Nobody knew me. So when I went to the showcase, they noticed that I was throwing harder than normal, and they asked me to be watched, seen by the other scouts. So I said, okay, no problem. So what I did was Ralph Doolittle gave me his number, Steve Limbo gave me his number, and then I ended up calling Steve Limbo and Ralph Doolittle when I pitched my next time. And when they came to watch me pitch, it was like 4 or 5 scouts, and John Hageman was one of the scouts, which was with the Atlanta Braves, and he said, listen, I saw enough, I want to sign you. So it was between the Dodgers and the Braves, between the nice finances that they gave me plus scholarships for college, I ended up picking the Braves.
And what were the colleges that were on your radar at that time?
None.
I appreciate the
honesty.
honesty.
No, seriously, no. The only one was the famous guy, Louis Santos. Santos was the only one from Queensborough Community College who was interested in me. Everybody else didn't even know who my name was. Excuse me. I got accepted to Oklahoma State University academically wise, but nobody knew nothing about baseball and Glenn Mitchell. So
it was an easy decision to go to pro ball.
Yeah.
Right? And now you mentioned to me when we spoke last time, you were only 17 when you got the pro ball, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's grown men, trying to put food on the table for their kids, and you were a kid at that point.
Well, they sent me to the minor leagues. They were much older than me, and I probably was one of the younger guys down there. But it was a learning process. It was a big learning process to play, to be away from home for the first time in my life, be away from home like that without mommy and daddy, and play professional baseball.
Now, just as it ends up, 1987 was just before the Braves went on a pretty historic run. I mean, from 1991 until 2005, they won the NL East every year, and that was in large part to their pitching rotation: John Smoltz, Steve Avery, Maddox, Glavine, and Chipper Jones, of course. So I'm sure you had some overlap with some of those players in the minor leagues.
I met Tom Glavine through Andrew Denson, who was one of their number ones. Smoltzy and me, we met, John Smoltz. We met during instructional ball, playing basketball. Pat Mahomes, we were playing basketball. Willie Bankside in New Jersey. We all snuck away on Sunday because that was our off day to play basketball. But the Braves had the biggest minor league system at that time.
Really?
Yeah, we had maybe 4 or 5 A teams. And that was unheard of back then. So in 1986 to 87, 88, 89, they signed a lot of players from all different sports, and just kind of like I would say they got rid of what wasn't good for them and kept what was the best for them, and that's how they made up their system. Because at that time they got voted the best minor league team in MLB. Yeah.
And what were the living arrangements like in the minor leagues in those days? Because it's pretty well known that it's not as glamorous as some people make it out to be. But can you tell our audience that may be unfamiliar, the realities of minor league baseball, especially during that time when you have all these players in the system, like you mentioned?
Yeah, it was rough. You live in an apartment with 2 or 3 guys, or for us, it was a trailer park house that was actually good. It was nice. And then when I was in South Carolina, of course, it was a lot of AC that we needed. So it was okay, but it was rough. Yeah, but one of the things is okay, like you're used to living on your own, or you're used to even paying your bills. Some of my roommates weren't used to doing none of that. Paying bills or getting a rental contract or anything like that. So it was rough sometimes because one guy knew how to do it, another guy didn't, and then when the season's over, they're gone. You still have a bill. So it was a little crazy.
Yeah, people don't really think about that, and now Major League Baseball has kind of stepped up to their credit, whether they wanted to or not is kind of a different story, but now they're going to be taking care of the housing for players, and they're going to get paid a little bit more and be in the union. So it's been a long time coming, but it's about time. So 1992, the professional career ended, but before that, you started getting involved with pitching lessons. So can you tell us a little bit about how that started?
Well, that started with me catching for Howie Gershberg, who was the pitching coach for the California Angels. And one of the minor league pitching coaches, and a lot of times the big leaguers would bring him to camp. I started catching at what's the old place name? I can't remember.
It was an indoor facility?
Yeah, it was a nice indoor facility, and I used to catch for him. Actually caught Steve Carson, there.
Future big league.
Yeah, so I started catching for him, and then after a while, started teaching at New York Tech. Bob Hirschfield's camps, and then I just kept doing it, But one of the things I did learn was teaching helped me to learn why I didn't make it. That was one of the biggest things I kept looking for. But
yeah, and when it comes to what it takes to be a big leaguer, I think a lot of the guys in pro ball, even 30 years ago, had the velocity, relatively speaking. However, whatever the average velocity was then, they had the arm strength, but kind of what separates them is the mental side, and that's something that you're very big on now. So when did you come to that realization that it's what's between the ears that could kind of separate the good from the great players?
Yeah, a lot of times when I spent my time teaching with Dave Lemanzic's place, he used to talk to me a lot about the game itself, and listening to all of the different mindsets of people that he would tell me about, and then talking to Howie Gershberg about different people, and then of course one of my other mentors, which was Nardi Contreras, who was big director of pitching for the Yankees. I realized that it was the mindset. It was the mindset that made you better or made you worse. Depression, anxiety. It was amazing because I remember there was a time I was playing where I just wanted to go home. I didn't want to play no more. I just wanted to go home, and I didn't realize that was my depression. You know what I'm saying? That was the real depression that set in me. And one of my friends told me, if you come home, I'll never forget, and I'm going to mention you, Scott. He said, if you come home, we fighting. And I was like, what do you mean we fighting? He says, you know how many people would give their left arm to be where you are? And I said, yeah. He said, no, you don't come home. You play until they let you go. So.
Yeah, and it's a generational thing. It seems like back probably 50, 60 years ago, that would have been unheard of. Like, oh, what do you mean you came home? But people prioritize mental health now more than anything. And we saw, a couple of years ago, Mark Appel, pitcher, first overall pick, didn't make the major leagues and wound up walking away from the game. Made a comeback later on, but that was unheard of. So, I think that it happens all the time now. There's players that if they just, if they don't have everything together between the ears, that could be their undoing in a career. And you've worked with hundreds of athletes, maybe thousands. What's kind of the common denominator that you see in the guys that are successful? Like you worked with some big leaguers now, Justin Dunn, Nick Tropiano, Kyle Martin was in the upper levels with the Orioles. I mean, shed some light on what those guys did that let them break through.
Well, they're still working. It's an everyday work ethic. You have to keep working on your mind. You have to get I always tell guys, you have to find a program that fits you that will help you be consistent with yourself. And if you can do that, it's something that you work on every day that will make you grow and make your mind strong. Because if you don't, you're gonna suffer. You know, when you hear players walking away from the game, or you hear about college students quitting, you know, some people trying, going with suicide. You know, it's because their program has a fault in it. I always say there's a fault. It's like when you hit return, you're gonna get a good result. If you hit return and you get a virus, something that you put into your mind messed up. You know, and you have to keep teaching it. You have to keep teaching it, learning it, teaching it, learning it, so that you find the program that fits. So when you hit return, you have a good positive result.
And I'm glad you mentioned the college, because I didn't want to just focus on the pro guys, because there's probably more people it's applicable, regarding finding the right college. So now that you work with younger athletes, what's something that you tell them before they make that decision? Because we see all the time, kids are so quick to want to announce their commitment on Instagram, and then that's just the start of it. Now they have the hard work actually start. So what do you tell some of your athletes that are good enough to pitch in college, but you want to get their mind right as far as what decision they're going to make to call home?
Well, the first thing I tell them to do is do your research on the school. I said, do your research on the school, do your research on the coaches, and make sure that you're going into a healthy environment. I said, if you don't do that and you get there and you've been a superstar in high school and you go to college and you're not a superstar, your mind is going to take a serious hit. Do the research and study, which is study things that make you relax, things that calm you down. I tell guys, every guy I've ever taught, I always told them, learn how to breathe. Breathe before you throw the pitch. Breathing relaxes the body. They do it in martial arts. They do it in lifting weights. So why wouldn't you do it when you pitch? I remember there was a guy I was watching in spring training hit, and all of a sudden he would take a deep breath, relax, and then as the ball's coming and he's making contact, he would breathe out, just like lifting weights. But the biggest thing when you're looking for your college, you have to do your research. Everybody researches everything else. They on social media all the time, and I'm like, you don't research how the school is, how long the coach has been there, what is his biggest thing.
Roster turnover.
Yeah, his roster's up and down. Some guys from our area, some athletes from our area. Oh, I'm going to Texas, coach. And I said, why? He was like, he says he needs me as a pitcher, or he needs me as an infielder. And then when they get down there, they found out that he has like 10 more in that position. And I'm like, you didn't look at the roster? And I was like, you just listened to him. I said, it's okay. Social media lets you do research. Do it. You can do it. It's not against the law to do the research. Find out. You're going down there. I'm this second baseman, and you go down there and you find out you're 6 deep.
Yeah. What's some things you like to work on with young pitchers that are struggling with their confidence? We see it all the time. Anyone's susceptible to it. Even if you had great stuff. I was somebody that had success, but all it takes is one bad outing and then they can start to snowball. So if you have somebody come in, for a lesson, and all of a sudden you start to notice that they don't have that same confidence in their fastball or their abilities anymore, how do you peel back that curtain and try to get their confidence back?
Well, one of the first things I get them to do is start journaling. Start writing stuff down. When they're having good games and when they're having bad games. How you feel. What do you do? Like, okay, perfect example, I remember the Mind Gym, that's a book, and I had a pitcher who was pitching in the county championship this year. So I said, you know what I want you to do is, before the game, I want you to look on YouTube, and because you can't watch it if you're driving, or if you can watch it, I want you to watch nothing but the greatest things that a pitcher you like, you love, whether it's DeGrom, whether it's Scherzer, whoever it is, watch all their highlights. That's all I want you to do, watch all their highlights, and then go pitch the game. And he was like, why? I said, trust me, just watch it. The reason I did that is because I'm trying to change his mindset. I want him to think about all positive things. So when kids come to me negative, the first thing I think of is, how can I change his mindset? How can I get him to be positive? every single time that you're thinking of something negative, I'm saying something positive. And because he's journaling, I have him write more positive than negative. Then he keeps doing it over and over again. It becomes a part of him. You know. By the way, it was Pat Barrett for Wheatley. They won the county championship.
And work. I like that. You know, it's amazing. Yeah. Confidence is such a big part of pitching. I mean, when you start to lose, you can almost forget all the success you had. I know from my experiences, you almost don't remember what it was like to win a game, even if it was, you know, it could have been a month ago, it could have been 3 outings ago. But conversely, once those wins start to pile up, you have no doubt that you're gonna continue to win.
We go through a process more than we deal with the results, because we'll think about the process that got us there. We don't think about the results. You know, I'm sure Dusty Baker's not talking about we won the World Series still. I think he's talking about how we got there. All the things that happened that year, that happened in the news, that happened with each player that was funny, that we don't know nothing about. You know, but I'm sure he's talking about that process, that longevity of process that goes on to get to the ending result. You know, I mean, you know, when we were talking before you started, you were talking about things in the past that got you to be here. You know.
Yeah, one thing I also have noticed with how the game has changed is how pitchers have had to accept all different types of roles, right? Yeah. Like when you were playing, there seemed to be more of a defined role with pitchers in Major League Baseball, pro baseball, right? You guys wanted to know if you were a starter, a short reliever, lefty specialist, or a closer.
Right.
Now it seems like it's very fluid, right? Like unless you're at the top end of the game, if you're Edwin Diaz right now, he knows he's getting the ball if the Mets had the lead in the ninth inning, or you know last year Holmes when he was at his best for the Yankees.
Right.
Is that something you ever try to preach to your athletes if they ever come in and they're like, my coach, he's not committing to me as being a weekend starter, a Friday night guy, or if they had a bad start, he wants me to work out of the bullpen next time, and they start to complain. I mean, how do you handle those types of situations?
I think it's the easiest way to say that is, what did you go to college or high school to play baseball for? Did you come here to sit on the bench, or did you come to play? If you're in college, when I was the pitching coach in college for 15 years, guys were like, Coach doesn't want me to play second base. He wants me to play shortstop. I said, so you're going to play shortstop? He was like, I never played shortstop. I said, so you'd rather sit on the bench? I said, there's only two things. Either get out there and play or sit on the bench. So I tell guys all the time, I said, listen, your objective is to play. Play. Closer, starter, reliever, specialist, I don't care what you do. I think you'd feel much better playing than sitting next to me. I sit there all the time. I don't move, you know. And a lot of guys are like, you know what, Coach, you're right. And like there's a catcher that I deal with who catches for me. And he says, I want to catch, but he wants me to play first. He says, because he has a starting catcher. Play first. Or sit on the bench. You have your choice. That's your choice. I'm not making your choice, but I'm sure you would rather play.
It should be an easy decision if the kids are committed to it. So you were a college coach for many years. What are the things that you miss about the game? You know, that grind. I know some people, it gets a negative connotation being at the field every day, but I'm sure someone like you, a baseball lifer, you loved it.
I love the game. I love the game. I'm always looking to get better at the game. You know, I'm always listening to people's whys. You know, why they do the things they do. You know, I just like to understand how you made it through all the negative. You know, all the sacrifices you made. You know, and I'm always constantly asking guys about their sacrifice, you know, about, like I said, about their why. The more I ask about their sacrifice, the more I get to learn more about somebody who might have the same problems. You know, my whole thing is if I can deal with someone's problem, if I can help them, okay, that will make me learn more, okay? If I can learn from other people's mistakes, then when someone comes with that mistake, it's easy for me to help them. You know what I mean? And that's my whole thing. So with dealing with college and dealing with the pro guys and dealing with people that in life in general, if I can meet you where you're at in life, I'll be able to help you.
Are there any players now in Major League Baseball or when you were younger that you watched how they went about their business, their mindset, their work ethic that you really try to emulate?
No, I take a little bit of everybody because it's not me duplicating. It's me finding a way to, like I said, get a program from the different people that I meet, the different people that I talk to, and make up my program. Who is the original programmer for myself is Glenn.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk to guys like, oh, I want to be like DeGrom, I want to be like Scherzer, and I'll be like, I want to be like this guy, that guy. And I said, no, you don't. You want to understand what got them to where they're going, and then you want to take little pieces of research from them and make you.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Bruce Lee said it that way. He says, listen, you study everybody, and then you come up with your own formula for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going to make you strong. Not Bruce Lee's way, not DeGrom's way, not mommy and daddy's way,
mm-hmm.
but your way. Whatever's going to make you, because everybody's different, but you got to build your own program and make it yours. And that's what makes you strong. That's what makes you get better. That's why I love the game, But I started studying everything. I studied martial arts. I studied pickleball. I didn't know nothing about pickleball, tennis, golf, gymnast, volleyball, softball. I study everybody who does something that is hard to do, hard to accomplish, but they get it done and become great.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we sign off today, can you tell our audience how they can get in touch with you and if they want to be a part of Gem Mental Game Pro?
Yep, GemMentalGamePro.com. GemMentalGamePro.com. Or call me at 516-678-5131. That's it. And if you just want to talk, I'm here to listen. I love the game, but with me, it's all sports that matter.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Glenn, thank you so much for your time. Very insightful. Thank you to Long Island Fieldhouse for hosting today's podcast.
Yep.
And thank you for tuning in to the first episode of this season of the Axcess Baseball Podcast. Good night.